Perfect, yes?
That's very nice.
Okay. Thank you. Can we start? Okay, finally, after the test of microphone. Thank you very much to everybody who has come here on this very special occasion. We have the privilege of welcoming here at CIE a very special guest, a Finnish journalist, Jessikka Aro, who will be talking about, she's shaking her head, she will explain, who will be talking about propaganda, trolling, and how certain people and systems affect information and transmission of information and actually the global world, essentially. I will ask Tomáš here to frame it all and welcome our other guests, and there will be enough time for questions at the end, so please don't hesitate. It's a very unique opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Petra. Now you see we really are equipped here, so I will use these two mics in order to continue with what Petra started. Petra Key, by the way, the academic director of CIEE, who is kindly hosting us here in these premises. So thank you, CIEE, so much for doing it this time. My name is Tomáš. I'm representing the NGO Novinářský inkubator, journalism incubator. I'm also the instructor at CIE and NYU Prague, who is also co-hosting this event with us, together with the fourth partner, that is the Czech NGO called Million Moments for Democracy. I have the special honor of introducing you the kind guest that Petra already announced for us, Jessikka Aro from Finland. Jessikka is an awarded journalist, a non-fiction author, and also a communication director. So multiple roles, a lot of topics. The topic for today, the main topic is, I believe, clear: Russian information warfare as a security threat. There will be a lot we can tackle in that regard. We are looking forward to your questions. I'm especially looking at my students from my seminar and course on totalitarianism. Though, before we do so, and before we give the floor to Jessikka for her introductory lecture, we want to pass the floor on our colleagues from Million Moments of Democracy. My colleague Bernadette will represent the NGO and share with us her introductory remarks. Bernadette, yours is the floor.
Thank you. Hi. I wish you a great day, everybody. Okay, there's 6 months until the parliament election here in Czech Republic. Each one of us can help ensure these elections turn out well. The choice is not ideal. One of the side, we have parties made up from extremism and authoritarianism who won't hesitate and undermine the rule of the law and democratic principles. On the other side, we have the parties that from the current government, imperfect, a government that has disappointed many people. But yet, despite all that, these parties honored and defeat of the democratic principles in our country. There is still time to decide which path we want to take. For Millions Moment for Democracy, the way is clear, and the choice is absolutely clear. We are living in a turbulent time, and navigating them is not an easy task. Wars waged by aggressors no longer take place only on the battlefields. They have also spilled over into the online space. And it must be said, in this hybrid war, Russia is winning. The online space, full of trolls trying to question and trample and through the clear facts, has unfortunately become a powerful tool to manipulate masses of people and influence elections, rules even in free countries, for example, here in Czech Republic. That's why we are grateful to all the brave people who, at the cost of their comfort and convenience, fight for the true and democratic values. Thank you, Jessikka, for her commitment, and by that, I mean the wholehearted dedicating on herself with everything that entires. Thank you for fighting for what matters the most, the truth, and for freedom. Thank you.
Great. With these introductory works, I'm turning Jessikka to you now and asking you to deliver your introductory lecture. Yours is the floor. Welcome to Prague.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. These introductory remarks were so lovely that I'm almost in tears. I was only shaking my head because I'm a Finn and I'm not good with compliments. So thanks a lot. I get other type of feedback, much more. So it's really great honor. Thank you, Tomas, for the cooperation, for bringing me here. Thank you for having me here. Let's have a really interesting session today. I'm really looking forward for the part where you will be asking questions, providing your comments, and even criticism. I'm very welcome to that. So we'll have plenty of time for that at the end. However, let's go to the main topic, which is the Kremlin's information warfare and how it is and forms a security threat. My background is completely in journalism, as well as basically looking into Russia, investigating Russia, information warfare and extremism. I have been living in Russia. I have been living in Moscow as well as in Petrozavodsk, and also felt how it's like to be studying in a Russian university where they don't actually teach you science. Instead, they process you ideologically. And I need to also mention my inherited interest towards Russia. My both grandmothers were forced to either evacuate or defend Finland against the Soviet Union aggression back in 1930s. And they started telling me all these stories about Soviet Union and Russian aggression when I was already a little kid. You know, we do have a common border with Russia, over 1,300 kilometers, and we are born to prepare against Russia. So, first some history. The Kremlin did not start information warfare yesterday. They have been practicing for decades. I have found many quotes and references from literature showing that they have been planning and designing their operations, of course, even longer than since the 1950s. But this is specifically interesting example because in the 1950s, the then Soviet Union KGB chief Shelepin was tasked with modernizing the KGB and finding ways of attacking the West alternatively to a physical kinetic warfare. So to basically damage us, harm us, and to go after us cheaper but also more efficiently than physical warfare. So he invited the best agents of the KGB. They brainstormed together and brought up the idea of fake information campaigns. This comes from a defector of that time. And I also need to remind what really strikes when living in Russia, that the first and foremost targets of the Kremlin's information warfare are the Russian citizens. You can really see there the really desperate atmosphere of the civilians who are being subjected to the Kremlin's warmongering, hate-mongering, militarism, and basically weaponization of human beings. And they are in one way programmed, for example, towards hatred against Ukraine and Ukrainians. So this is what I call the weaponization of people. They cannot really run away from these messages filling the information space in Russia because there are alternatives. The Kremlin controls the internet and the Kremlin controls the TV and other medias. So here I want to show you how the Russians themselves view information. It's completely different than us. They view it as a weapon. You can see Russia's defense minister Sergei Shoigu saying that mass media is a weapon and information is a weapon. And not just any weapon, he actually added that information is a weapon that can inflict serious wounds. This I want you to take from this lesson. They really view information as a weapon. They think of words or sentences or messages or social media posts as bullets or missiles. They are as destructive in psychological realm. And also researchers from Finland, they have found that the Russian military doctrine was updated when they started their then secret warfare against Ukraine back in 2014. They really stressed the importance of the information space. And I have myself been studying their information security doctrine, and they are quite adamant that they do have the right to defend themselves against other countries who they view are attacking them. So they view themselves as victims who have justified cause to attack others. So they actually turn everything upside down, when in fact they are the aggressors. And they have conceptualized total hybrid warfare and information warfare. They have a lot of very vivid public debate about these topics, even in Russian press. And by the way, they also teach information psychological warfare in the universities of Russian state, for example in Moscow. And if you're a student and you decline these great lessons of becoming an ideological Putinist information warrior, you face, if you're a man, you face going to the mobilization to war against Ukraine. So basically you don't have a choice. And that's how the totalitarian Russia works. And by the way, they are tricked to those courses. They are not openly told that you are now going to be educated as an information warfare propagandist, yet they call those courses information management, for example. So here, very interesting insider of the Kremlin, who I interviewed back in 2014, he told me, why is Russia waging information war? Because that's one of the key questions of our time, and I asked him that. And he used to work with Putin early 2000. And Andrei Illarionov told that there are various reasons, most of them, of course, political. They have political goals, for example, justifying their warfare against Ukraine. But that's only one. They have so many different political goals, but also one of their own being, they just want to terrorize others because they want. Andrei Illarionov compared them to village bandit who wants to harm others because it can. So here, I want you to know that they also brag about their operations themselves. So if anyone ever tells you that RT, formerly known as Russia Today, provides you an alternative opinion which belongs to the freedom of speech, you can tell them that in fact they themselves view RT as information weapon. And by the way, RT is completely founded by Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin's insiders and their own editor-in-chief, so-called. Margarita Simonian has told in the Russian press that they are conducting information warfare against the whole world. Have you been seeing RT's materials either on television or on social media? No? All right, that's great. So they haven't been very successful. Here, some of the techniques that they are teaching in the same faculty where I used to study in exchange in the Moscow State University named after Lomonosov. So they have these secret courses in which they pick students to whom they teach techniques that are meant to knock the enemy's brain down. And they are special combat propaganda. And I know this because this distinguished Russian proper journalist and author Vladimir Yakovlev exposed this in his blog post some years ago. So he told that the Russian officers were teaching them these basically information psychological methods that allow them to control and change civilians' ideas, attitudes and behavior. So, for example, let's see rotten herring. They spread smears, lies, rumors publicly, for example, on social media or on fake news sites around the target, so that the targeted person always carries this stink like rotten herring. Then big lie, which I've seen in use, for example, in the Kremlin's information warfare against the United States, a lot. And the big lie means that they are telling such a big lie that no one could ever believe that someone would actually come up with such a big lie. And the lie is usually so big that it causes emotional trauma. And it includes such material that it causes emotional trauma. And when it causes emotional trauma, it might stick so that the targeted person will forever carry it. For example, I can state that some of the materials I've seen Russian trolls spreading about certain named democratic politicians being heads of pedophile rings and or abusing children and or using drugs made out of children's bodies. They are the type of material which, at least to me, are close to able causing emotional trauma. And there are many others more. So here, I started to investigate the Russia's use of social media trolls back in 2014, and it was 1 year after really brave Russian proper journalists had uncovered the so-called troll factory in St. Petersburg. In this factory, kids in their 20s were paid relatively well by Russian standards for spreading Kremlin's propaganda, pro-Putin propaganda, from behind pseudonyms, fake profiles, anonymous profiles, for example on Facebook, Twitter, blogosphere, and comment sections of regular media online. And I wanted to know, does this really work? Do people fall for this? So I asked Finnish people to investigate with me, and I asked them to participate and tell me, as a journalist, have they witnessed some Russian trolls online? Where? What happened? And how did these people react? Because Russian security services who are operating the troll farms and troll factories and these fake news sites, they are specifically aiming psychologically people's decision-making processes, so cognitive processes, intellectual processes. So I wanted to know, is this just bullshit that anyone can call out, or do some people fall into this? We didn't even have the name then, or the word, or the concept of Russia troll. It was still such a new thing. I had to even pick which word do I choose. Do I use Kremlin troll or Russia troll? So it was such a new word. So I was made the target of Russian psychological influencing. Here you can see Russian fake news stories spread on, it was almost 10 Russian sites in which I was framed as a Finnish journalist who is well known and famous assistant of NATO and American Baltic Special Services, who is compiling an illegal database of Russian Putin supporters in Finland, and by doing that, committing crimes. So a false representative was made out of my actions, and it was added to my contact information. I found these after my phone had been exploding for days by Russian people, Russian speakers, who had read these articles and thought that they were the truth. And there I realized I had been working with propaganda and, for example, jihadist propaganda and recruitment materials before, and I knew how it worked. But in this case, I knew it by heart because I witnessed on a very micro level how it really works. These trolls and security services produce material that fuel people's emotions. In this case, people's hatred against me. So they used lies about myself to really fuel people's anger towards me and to act on that anger. So that's why I was receiving so many wishes for me to go to hell and to prison and kill myself from Russian speakers, the ones who had been reading this. Even I received a phone call from, it was actually a Ukrainian number because I received phone calls from Kazakhstan, Baltic states, of course Russia and elsewhere. Of course internet is international, and so it was very international targeting campaign. And this guy, very interesting, called Johan Beckman up there, the blonde guy. And the blonde guy is a Finnish national who happens to work for the Russian security services in this institute whose logo is over there. It says Russian Institute of Strategic Studies. And it's very interesting because it's manned by Russian security agents of different security agencies who are appointed by Putin himself. And they are organizing hybrid warfare operations, for example, trying to exchange governments to pro-Kremlin governments, trying to influence elections. Just 3 years after this, Reuters, the news agency, found that this RISI agency was in fact in charge of designing the hacking and troll operation against the elections in United States back in 2016. So promoting Trump and having trolls attack your elections then. And so, also another very interesting example of how Russian disinformation is at its worst, I feel, when it's being used to have individuals go to war to fight on the Russian side of the war. This guy here is Petri Viljakainen, just a guy from eastern Finland who started to read Johan Beckman's, the blonde guy's, propaganda materials online, became radicalized and decided to leave from Finland to the war in Russia against the Ukrainians. So, and many others went too. And by the way, some US citizens went too, and also some other European citizens. In some European countries, some of these people have been prosecuted. Some of these people have already died, just like Petri Viljakainen here. Here, some of the material that has been sent to me, it says Finnish fascism, and it's the Finnish country flag that is smeared with Nazi symbols. This is horrifying for me. So I received this 2014, September, and only then I realized that the material, similar material that was already being used to demonize Ukraine by Russia as a Nazi country and fascist country, which Russia needs to go liberate, which was their excuse of going to war against it, was already also spread about Finland. And by the way, after Finland joined NATO in 2022, we have become a target for even worse material than this. So this is very basic technique of propaganda. Demonization of the target, because first you need to demonize the target to be able to justify the physical attacks against the target. If it's targeted to an individual, it's usually called dehumanization, or a group of individuals, dehumanization. First you dehumanize someone, and by doing that you create a permission to attack them. Here, troll group that was formed to Facebook in clear Finnish language, a group that called itself Russian Troll Army, which started attacking my person and my work immediately after my first article came out. On the course of my further investigations, I found that similar groups are also published in different languages. So they have some kind of secret administrators who are using pseudonyms and fake profiles, and they were basically just creating this safe space for all kinds of hate speakers to go after me personally. For example, defame me, that's a crime in Finland by the way, threaten me, fantasize of my stomach being slit, for example, and my alleged baby to be killed too. And I, by the way, reported it to Facebook multiple times, but Facebook didn't find any violations of the community standards. However, this network of such spaces exists not just on Facebook, but also on Telegram, recounted, the Russian equivalent of the Facebook, also so many secret groups on WhatsApp and elsewhere. So I also went to the Troll Factory early 2015, and it was very interesting because we found these recruitment ads where it says officially that its name is Internet Research Agency, and its recruitment ads, it was looking for social media managers, copywriters and graphic designers to work in 12-hour shifts, also during night time, and they would prefer that the employees would know English language and that they would produce material online on the course of their shifts. And by the way, they would really love if the employees would know how to use search engine optimization, probably to optimize the visibility of troll materials online. So we called to the recruiter and pretended that we want a job there. And we asked, what kind of material do you want me to produce? What kind of news do you want me to write if I become selected as your employee? And they said, political news. So already early 2015, there was a troll factory in St. Petersburg that was creating English language news against English language world. And we also made many other interviews with people who had been infiltrating into the troll factory and got out so much information about it. And we also got to material. I was about to say an interview, but you cannot really call it an interview, but the world's stupidest security guy who works in this building, because he came to yell at me and my colleague when we were taking photos and filming outside the main entrance. And he came out, I was filming him, and he started yelling, "Girls, you need to leave, because can't you see that this is an administrative building?" It was a very interesting revelation, because administrative buildings in Russia are specially protected entities by the presidential decree, always places like police stations or nuclear power plants or military bases. So officially the stupidest person actually gave out information that this is Russian state structure and not some kind of commercial agency as it portrayed to be. This is also part of Russian military thinking, masquerading, deception. Everything they do is all about deception. So then when we came back, Facebook was being used to fuel real people to go to the streets to protest the Finnish broadcasting company, my then employee, as a revenge for our reporting from Russia. Just a really stupid looking example of just a handful of people protesting one media house in Finland, but they did cause harm and worry in journalists, and also it serves as a great example of what the Russian trolls later did against the United States. They started to use this Facebook's event feature to start organizing protests in US soil. Pro-Trump protests run from the troll factory in St. Petersburg, anti-immigrant vs pro-immigrant protests in the US soil, all directed from the troll factory. To me, it looks like as if the Russian trolls are playing us real humans, as if we are a computer game for them. Also, the harassment against me continued. Someone pretended to be my father, who had been dead for 20 years, so someone really invaded my privacy. My father was not a public figure, nor was his death public information, but someone found it and used it to really attack me or try to attack me psychologically. I told the police, but the police couldn't find who was it. And here, the findings of my crowdsourced investigation. I spoke or received information from around 200 people, and some of them majority told that they had been already impacted by Russian trolls. So operators online that have been threatening them, calling them names such as CIA or Russophobes, or threatening to do something to their family. And some people, Finnish people, told me that they had stopped commenting Russia issues online completely because they didn't want to have interactions with any kind of Russia fanatics. At the same time, there were also individuals who didn't become influenced in any way. But the worst thing in my view is that some people become so influenced that they start spreading the material to their own networks. This is how you see, for example, RT materials being spread, because people, when they first are exposed to it, it somehow pushes their certain buttons, and then they share it further because they feel it's so great that they want their friends to see it too. And here, some of the troll messages that I found they were spreading back then. You can maybe recognize some of these because nowadays, after February 2022, the Russian destructive warfare against Ukraine's escalation, this became mainstream. The Kremlin started to say out these same lines, and even worse, after 2022 February. But back then I found that they were spreading these on the troll sphere, also in international platforms and also amongst the US populations. This wasn't only directed to Finnish people, but also to US and UK and Canada. And by the way, did any of you recognize the first photo that I had in this PowerPoint presentation? It was a satellite image of a fighter, or alleged fighter. It was a really infamous fake satellite image spread by the Russian Ministry of Defense back in 2014 when MH17 plane en route from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur was taken down by Russian officers in eastern Ukraine. And the Russians were trying to put the blame on Ukraine. So they published a fake satellite image to convince everyone that it was in fact the Ukrainians who shot the plane down with their fighter jet. So here, a very typical pro-Kremlin fake news site that tries to pretend of being a local alternative news site. It's in Finnish, actually, the name MV comes from WTF, and this is WTF paper, and they appeared from nowhere to online sphere and started to spread information that the mainstream media does not tell. And when you looked at it, surprise, it was Russian RT translated into Finnish language. Also Russian troll factory material translated into Finnish, and all kinds of materials of Russian information warfare translated into Finnish, but in special occasions they also use English language. And special for them was to attack me. Here are some of their over 300 field stories that they have published against me. And this is seriously criminal in Finland. I know that the legislations change, but in Finland this is like aggravated defamation and or stalking, if it goes on and on and on. But they have really created this community of real people in Finland who hate me because they believe all of this stuff is true. According to the Finnish police estimate, I'm facing the threat of impulsive violence if I'm in the wrong place in the wrong time, because so many people have been turned into my haters. I have had 3 real friends threatening me based on these materials. 2 of them I was forced to inform to the police. This is to tell you how really, really powerful disinformation is. It really changes people. Here also very interesting, YouTube ads on pro-Kremlin extremist channels. These are ads of proper Finnish and international companies that have happened to bought visibility and advertisement on Kremlin troll channels on YouTube. I called all of their heads of marketing and communications, and they were terrified. They seriously didn't even know this. They were just using some media companies that then put their ads to different sites or different YouTube channels. Here, a really disgusting, disgraceful YouTube operation. Russian security service conducted operation against my friend, who is now deceased. This is very visionary diplomat from Lithuania, Renatas Juška, who became an eyesore for the Russian security services because he was super active in supporting the Belarusian, which is ally of Russia, their civil society. And for that, his phone was illegally intercepted and listened to and recorded and then edited and put to YouTube with partly falsified subtitles. And that created a diplomatic storm against him and his other eavesdropped colleagues in 4 different countries. And he used to be the Budapest ambassador of Lithuania. His career was destroyed. And this is also what I want you to bring from this session, that Russian trolls, which means Russian security services, they are really targeting their work to journalists. They really want to serve their stories and their angles to regular journalists, so that journalists would pick them up and spread them even further. Here, you know Bellingcat, so their head of investigation and founder, Elliot Higgins, really recommend to follow his work. They expose Russian crimes. He's also a massive target for the Russian security services and Russian filth machinery. Here, Swedish researcher Martin Krag, who made a really excellent research, shown on the top right. He researched Russia's influence activities against Sweden, and he was immediately made a target of the Russian filth machinery. Here, some of the examples from and against United States. For example, the 2016 election. Have you happened to read Robert S. Mueller's special investigator's report about Russian interference against the US election 2016? If not, please take a look. It's crazy. Seriously, it reads better than your ordinary page turner because it's horrifying to which length the Russian security services have gone in order to push Trump as your president already back then. Here, more recent information warfare, and I'll go to the most recent examples against the United States at the end of my presentation. But here you can see just the general idea that you can see that Russia is really heavily trying to push the international community to stop aiding Ukraine. Russia has been threatening EU and NATO countries basically with terror attacks against civilian transportation when they flood the Kyiv regime with their military and weapon systems. And just basically they are accusing Ukraine and West for everything they are doing themselves. Here is the threat I was referring to. This was in 2022. They really use threats and fear-mongering as part of their information psychological influencing, because it's actually surprisingly easy to convince people that if they defend themselves militarily or help Ukraine defend itself militarily, they are actually the escalators of the warfare. This is one of the key interests of Russia. However, I will soon come to end, but I just want to say that I have just this weekend finalized my first manuscript of my 3rd book named Putin's USA. This is how the Kremlin destroys and controls America. And it's a really bleak prospect. And I have been looking into most of the most recent, so in the time span of 10 years of Russian US intelligence services investigations and US Senate Intelligence Committee's various investigations of how Russia has been interfering with the elections, both in information space but also in the cyber domain, by attacking, for example, using the military intelligence officers to attack the Democratic candidates' emails, and then using military intelligence officer operated trolls on social media to spread that material further. And there are also so many spies that are active in the United States and who are, for example, basically weaponizing conservatism. That's one of their key goals. They are also infiltrating the Republican Party and exploiting that community in their operations. And I just want to tell you one really interesting thing. Did you happen to notice in November 11th last year, there was a statement published by the Russian news agency TASS, which is, by the way, completely in the pocket of the Kremlin, and they told it's like the main warlord in whole of the Kremlin, Nikolai Patrushev, who is the chief of the Security Council of Russia and basically Putin's boss. He told that now that Trump has won the election, he has to start paying debt because he leaned on certain powers who brought him to power. So now it's his turn. And when I am looking at Trump's policies that are anti-Ukraine, that are anti-human rights, it really looks that way. But I'll end here my presentation, and I'm really welcoming your questions, comments, and criticism.
Thank you so much, Jessikka. A lot of topics covered. You also authored the book called Putin's Trolls and Putin's World War. So you have at least 3 titles now, the third one in the pipeline, that tackle the pro-Kremlin disinformation and that sort of provide answers on why this world is so upside down now. Before I pose my own questions, I'm turning to the wider audience here in the hall and wondering who is going to pose the first question. Anybody, please step in. Kalani, please come over and talk to the mic. Hold on, we may have a microphone actually somewhere. Hold on, but just you talk, I'll look it up.
Okay. Okay. Very well done, I have to say. Amazing. So I have a question about the longevity of journalism. So America is kind of known for killing very effective journalists or like ostracizing them. And so I was just wondering, what do you think is going to be the more effective route to canceling great journalism? Is it this disinformation angle, or do you think it'll turn into like a murderous one?
That's a great question. Really big of a problem is the infiltration of journalistic outlets by Kremlin's propagandists, and even the infiltration of the news agencies, the prestigious one. Let me give you an example. When I was back in 2014 working with the news desk of the Finnish broadcasting company, so I was producing news non-stop on different shifts around the clock. I was confronted with news coming from international news agencies saying that it is in fact Ukrainians who are attacking Ukrainians in eastern Ukraine, that they were pro-Kremlin separatists. Excuse me, but they were actually Russian special services and Russian military officers who were attacking Ukrainians. They might have had some Ukrainian helpers, but it was coming across the border. So this is really tricky as a journalist, because it's journalistic routine to rely what the news agencies are bringing. I had witnessed similar problems with previous to 2008 Russian war against Georgia. It was so difficult to tell what is actually true and what is not, when sometimes we would still use some of the Russian news agencies because some of the Western news agencies aren't there to report. So we solely rely on Russian sources. So that's a really big issue for anyone who is working as a foreign affairs journalist, because you cannot change what's coming from the news agencies, and oftentimes you don't even have time to really fact check or ask for, let's say, expert view on that. And even sometimes there are experts who spread Kremlin propaganda. At the time we used to have actually a person operating as European Union's top spy chief, who was claiming publicly that it's the Ukrainians attacking Ukrainians. So you really need to be good to really survive and bring only the truthful things in the foreign affairs journalism. It's tricky, but it's doable.
Thank you. Next question. Please, could you guys kindly come over and talk to both of the mics? I'm sorry for that. Does it work?
Oh, which one?
Both.
Both? Sweet.
That's why you're here.
Oh, thank you.
I can hold it.
Oh, you want it? Okay. In recent years, as in since 2023, there's been a flood of AI Russian propaganda bots flooding chat rooms and comment sections of social media pages. Have you seen these bots' effects, and what can a person do to recognize when these bots are not real people?
It's almost always impossible to recognize it, unless you're an intelligence service officer who can actually look more deep who actually built this and what are they made of. Because, you know, actually they already started, I started seeing them back in 2014. Then Twitter had similar profiles that were spitting 100% same material at the same second that were pretending real people. But they were basically bots, just like pieces of codes spitting out the Kremlin's lines. It's really, really tricky. So you should be able to see at least the IP address where it's coming from, and not all trolls even, or bot or patriotic hackers, as they're called in Russia, they don't always operate from Russia. I went for my second book to following the CNN journalist, Clarissa Ward, whose work about Russia is excellent. I really recommend it. I went to Ghana, West Africa, where there is a building a little bit outskirts of Ghana, the capital, just a residential building, and they had around 16 Ghanaian youngsters operating as Russian trolls from there, and they didn't even know that they were operating as Russian trolls, because they were given the task of just enhancing this black identity and spreading social media material that would be interesting to the blacks, and often it also included material about, for example, police violence and such. So it's very difficult. I found just some time ago, through someone who hinted me, an AI girlfriend who is very, very lovely and pretends that, like, it's presented in its webpage that it wants to hear all your secrets, and it's very lovely company, and you can rely on it, and it will be your mentor. Then actually it turns into a full-blown Russian troll when you start asking questions about politics related to Russia. So this, I feel, is also so disturbing, because we know already of cases, not pro-Kremlin AI girlfriends, but just general AI girlfriends, who have also been giving bad advice and bad orders to people, for example, to kill someone with certain weapons, or kill themselves even. So to combine that with being Russian troll, AI girlfriend and possibly violent. It's horrible to even think, and it's horrible to think how people actually are tricked into giving their personal secret. And I made like a research of maybe 20 minutes from open sources, and I believe I found a guy who had coded this AI girlfriend, pro-Kremlin one, and he bragged of himself that he is a Russian, a guy who was born in Russian Imperium, who nowadays lives in the United States. So he has an ideology, and he doesn't specify that on the AI girlfriend's page. So I would just stay so far off all of these AI girlfriends and bots. And by the way, it really looked, I interacted with it a long time, but it was really emotionally draining because she or it, I'm not sure how to refer to the thing, was really, really aggressive towards me. So, but I was feeling that she or it was studying me all the time, because it became more and more like specified in its messaging towards just me. And it was so scary, so bad.
Thank you. Next question, please come over if you can. It's clumsy, but we have to do it this way. It's the easiest.
I have a question about Russian I have a question about Russian disinformation campaigns that have increasingly tortured LLMs by manipulating data, using, for example, the notable Pravda network. And how could we fight against this? Because like the LLMs need large data sets to be effective and to be better, but on the other hand, we have networks like Pravda. So what's your viewpoint of this?
If you feel like sitting, you can sit down.
It's okay. Thanks. Excellent question. One of the things that is being taught to the kids in Russia or university students in Russia who are forcefully being turned into ideological propagandists, they are being taught that it's perfectly okay and desirable to lie to people and to tell the people that it's for their own good. And for that, you just need to tell them information that they cannot check. So, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question properly, but it's difficult. Countering this is super difficult. But we would have to start from questioning all the information that is coming from Russian officials that we cannot check ourselves. For example, starting from the election results or the alleged election results, which actually brings me to a very interesting thing about and finding about Russian elections, so-called, as they have many different languages for Kremlin stealing their elections. But yeah, fighting manipulation is really tricky, but one thing I found useful as a journalist was trying to tell better stories, and with better I mean more skillful, more compelling, more interesting, more engaging stories than the Russian trolls and extremists were telling. Because it's really fight for the hearts and minds of people. So if we just let the people go and we do not engage with them, then they might as well be losing the information warfare. But I just feel that we need to be better as journalists, and this is a really challenge for us. However, this I really love to address. This is operations conducted by military and security services, directed at civilians, which really bugs me. I think that should be fought by armies and militaries. So our own Western intelligence structures. As journalists, as citizens, there's only so much we can do. But it's a lot. That's why so many journalists and researchers become targets of the Kremlin's trolls, because they are really seen as powerful antidote to this manipulation and lies.
Next question.
So you have been talking about people about Finnish people being affected by the information war led by Kremlin. So my question is, are there any physically present organized pro-Russian groups in Finland who are trying to attack the political system or journalism? And if so, is there any way to suppress them, to fight them? Thank you.
Excellent question. There are some. For example, after Russia started to push third countries such as Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan refugees that had been staying inside Russia for a long time across the border to Finland. And our government decided to close down the whole of border already over a year ago. That was the beginning of a pro-Kremlin movement of mostly Russian citizens or Russian speakers in Finland who started to demand opening of the border for their personal benefit, they claimed. And simultaneously it was supported from the Kremlin, with the Kremlin claiming that Finland's decision was Russophobic and closing the border is Russophobic and it should be opened. So there's that. They are, for example, organizing protests and trying to influence politicians to open the border. Then 2022, I received from another hinter screen captures and access to a secret WhatsApp group in which pro-Kremlin propagandists in Finland and Russian speakers in Finland were fueling each other and triggering each other to incite violence against Ukrainians in Finland. So they were spreading gun photos and racist slurs against Ukrainians, dehumanizing them, demonizing them, finding reasons of attacking them in this closed environment. And they also started organizing later physical counter-protests against the Ukrainians' own protests in Finland, the anti-war protests of the Ukrainians. So there's that. Then there are, for example, the, what's it in English? Peace defenders, which is already like a Soviet Union type organized group, international group, who claim that they are always promoting peace in different countries. What that actually means, they are trying to erase and cancel Russia's participation in any wars against Ukraine or Georgia or anywhere, and they are portraying United States usually as the warring aggressor in the world. So there's that kind of peace defending in Finland. They're quite active in the public debate. Let me think. Then there are night wolves. Have you heard about night wolves? The hybrid warfare motorcycle gang led by this guy nicknamed Surgeon, who's a Russian guy. So they were used in Kremlin's hybrid operations against Ukraine already 2014, 2015, and US intelligence put them on the sanctions and hybrid warfare lists. So they started to recruit real people from Finland using the site named WTF paper. So there's that. So basically pro-Putin motorcycle gang, which doesn't sound too good. And let me think. I would say those, and of course accelerationist terrorists. And these are the really, really fringe, farther to the far right people and groups, partly in communication with neo-Nazis in Finland, that really want to drive the escalation of the destruction of the society in Finland. This is an international phenomenon. So police has found evidence that some of these accelerationist terrorists have been communicating with some of the Russian trolls and propagandists in Finland. And so I'm sure there's a lot of connections that we don't know about, because these were also found only by the police. And by the way, your question really strikes to the core of this problem, because it's in the Russia's philosophy of hybrid warfare to support the terrorist groups and opposition groups and extremist groups in the countries that they are attacking in the hybrid realm. So that's really at the core. They want to really like cultivate and help and finance, for example. That's why we're seeing neo-Nazis going to participate in paramilitary camps in St. Petersburg, Russia, and then coming back from there and making a terror attack against the asylum seeker house, for example, in Sweden. This is a true story too. But yeah, one of the most worst, in my opinion, is the support for people who really go fight into Russia's ranks in the war against Ukraine.
By the way, I think the underlying fun fact about the night wolves, the motorcycle gang, is that they are riding, of course, American motorbikes, Harley Davidsons, right? So this is so absurd, like all their missions they're carrying out. Next question.
How can we ensure that the people that are perpetrating these like misleading information campaigns are held accountable? Because you said a lot of it is illegal, especially in if they're operating from EU or the EU countries or the US. So how can we ensure that the police and the justice system has a role in holding these people accountable?
I wish we could. I really truly wish. The US intelligence has done a great job trying to get them accountable, the GRU officers, the 12 of them who attacked your elections 2016, and probably after that too. They made an indictment. Obviously, none of them has been brought to court because it's impossible, and they're not going to just surrender themselves. But in Finland, in my case, the police investigated in the beginning. I believe 5 individuals have received convictions in my case, and but also at least as many haven't. So police doesn't have the resources. This really goes beyond Helsinki police resources to go after anything like this. And it really differs from country to country. In places like Serbia, the police will laugh if you try to bring them a case concerning pro-Kremlin propagandists claiming publicly that you're a CIA agent. They really don't care. In places like Sweden, one of my friends, Patrik Oksanen, who is a journalist who was defamed as a pedophile after he published an article about Russian information warfare, he received justice. Unfortunately, it's only sometimes the tip of the iceberg that the police really looks into. But I think the best kind of regulation would really be to have the social media companies to really stop basically cooperating with Russian security services, because they could easily block part of their communications. But as you see from my example, from early of my presentation, they just do nothing. I have even been visiting the headquarters of Facebook, Google, and former Twitter, telling them that really you should really at least get rid of the crimes. And they're just like, yeah, sure, we know, but they haven't. So, but they're really giving space and helping these, unfortunately. Probably it brings them clicks. You know, part of their material is interesting to some people and brings clicks.
Okay, the rise of totalitarianism. Class, any questions? Yes, please, come over.
Kind of going well off of that point on social media, I was just kind of wondering, how do you think the US administration and current events, like a Russian state news agent being let into the Oval Office, in January, Meta, Facebook, Instagram, announcing that they're getting rid of fact-checking, and like also the uncertainty of Radio Free Europe funding, just kind of how do you think that'll end up impacting Russian information warfare in the US and beyond?
Thank you, excellent question. Really badly. It's horrible. It's like opening all doors and windows open to the influence. I can only think of one reason to it, and the reason is that the Russian trolls are providing political support and free assistance in helping these administration members to become elected. It's a wave they are riding. It helped them to get in, it will help them to stay in, and that's really scary, even on my scale. Also, to mention one thing that I have been just talking endlessly about, Thomas has already heard this like maybe 5 times today, that 4 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, the US new Trump appointed Defense Minister Pete Hegseth told publicly that he will end the US Cyber Command's operations against Russian information operations. Oops. Not good. Seriously not good. Seriously so dangerous. And I don't even know why he would say something like this. I thought it would be a state secret, but apparently it's not a state secret. Maybe it was a gift to Russia. To me it sounds like one. So good luck trying to somehow block that without the help of the US Army.
So thank you. So thank you again, Jessikka, for everything today and for all your work. And I would like to ask you, well, I'm struck to see that more and more people are more leaning to consume the media and information which are presented in more aggressive way, targeting especially their emotions. And these kind of strategies are more associated with either Kremlin or other right-wing leaning groups. So, but also not only, of course, even on the left, but still usually more liberal media and also the leaders tend to be more soft in presenting their opinions and information. So do you think that in future even the left or liberal media or even the leaders will maybe get more aggressive, or what are their possibilities, what they can do in this world which tends to consume this kind of information more and more? Thank you.
Thank you. Let me underline the fact that I'm coming from a country where we don't have such division, or let's say we didn't have such a division until some only years ago, before we had a really far-right active party in our government. But anyways, I'm coming from a completely different kind of more plural, I guess, mediascape, and not so divided mediascape than many countries are. But I would certainly hope that the language would not turn more aggressive, but I know from my own experience and from Finnish broadcasting companies' experience that this brings the situation in which you start to think as a media, should we start engaging directly with these people who have already dropped to the rabbit hole? Is it our duty? Is this a journalistic new routine? Should we start meeting them, maybe have group meetings with them? Because one of the lines of the Russian information warfare, their biggest narratives is to create mistrust against all Western media, and then simultaneously bring the idea and construct the idea that they are to be trusted. So there are more and more people falling there, but that would be one option, in my opinion. Sometimes, you know, I did answer to all of those phone calls that I received from people who thought that I'm a spy, and also after that campaign continued in Finnish language, I also continued interacting with people who believed I'm some kind of spy. And oftentimes when I interacted with them, they gave up. They were just like, okay, sorry, I didn't even read your original story. So it was just like 5 minutes of discussion and we would end up on the same note. But it takes more than that when the volumes of disinformation is so big as it is, for example, in the English language information space.
Thank you so much for coming out. I just wanted to ask, in kind of regard to your AI girlfriend example, would you say that there's implication that the Kremlin is going to be utilizing AI more in the future and possibly even outsourcing it instead of using human counterparts? Thank you.
Definitely, and it's already doing it. And obviously we won't ever be seeing, hopefully at least, an AI girlfriend operated from the Kremlin sites, or like an official document, a prikaz, an order from Putin to put out an army of AI girlfriends online. But I'm sure it already exists. And the outsourcing term that you used, it's brilliant, because that's what the Kremlin does. They always use this official denial of accountability, so that they can always officially deny any kind of involvement. For example, with the troll factory, it's a private business, or with any of the night wolves, it's private. With any of the Wagners sabotaging Africa, it's private, even though it's completely their project. But they need this in order to use connections and diplomacy with some of the countries that actually believe these lies. So there are countries that are Russia's allies, and there are countries who want to support these lies because it also benefits them. So yeah, they are completely outsourcing much of this, and they already are outsourcing much of the trolling, like just the fall before your last elections, 2024, the then administration's State Department put out big press operation telling that there is Russian Kremlin propaganda being spread by American social media influencers who are being paid by PR agencies and not directly by the Kremlin. So sometimes these social media influencers or trolls, they don't even know that they are being paid by the Kremlin. They are not told that you are now part of the Russian security service agency. And it's also easier to keep that denial going on when even the operators don't know they're part of a bigger program. That's why it's also intriguing as a journalist to investigate this, because you know that you will not find a document. There is no document, but you just have to pinpoint all the other facts and put it and prove everything. For example, comparing the narratives with the Kremlin's narratives.
Thank you. This is maybe a little philosophical question, but you are talking about the fact that Kremlin wants divided world, basically divided EU, divided USA. And as an example, you said the Trump, because you're either pro-Trump or anti-Trump. But I feel like, for example, this precise example is will be one of the topics that will always divide the people. So my question is, even without the influence of Kremlin, so my question is it even possible to be not divided, or like being able to put the people together in topics such as, for example, Trump? Thank you.
Thanks, excellent thinking. I think the most divisive factor in Trump is Trump. So as long as he keeps trumping, and as long as he keeps spreading Kremlin's propaganda, for example, he will be the most divisive thing ever happened to the United States. So yes and no, I guess.
I'm sorry, I'm not a student, but please, first of all, we highly recognize your effort. Not only appreciate, but we highly recognize it. And my question is, I have heard about the Putin Team A or 1, that consisting of scientists and politicians observing the whole globe and defining the potential point of risk which might be interesting to get involved in. Have you heard about it? And last but not least, I think that function of journalists might be, certainly they like to have the differences as deep and volley between the social groups as deep as possible. And the role of journalism might be to fill these volleys to make differences not so unreachable.
Well, thank you so much. Russia is continuously monitoring the information space, and it's doing it with the use of its special services. Putin just has, in the recent near history, has been telling its security services to continue monitoring the political processes globally. And this is tied to the Russia's political goal of changing the world order from unilateral US-led world to multilateral, multipolar world, where Russia is much bigger player than it has been for a long time. So it's really eager to go and fight all the monitored information fights it can find. I noticed this already at the troll factory, that there were lights on and people working around the clock. And that's specifically for the reason that they can attack the ongoing debates and the ongoing informational conflicts and go fuel and go try to turn it to their interest and to their victory. So yeah, there has been also articles by some, for example, Finnish military magazines that they have a really well developed internet's control system that is also targeted abroad. So they have really mapped influential people and hubs of information internationally, and they really try to gain influence on those hubs. And when you look at their own philosophy in information warfare, they are really all into information superiority, because they feel and think powerfully, and with them I refer to the Russian generals, that if they control the information space, they might not have to shoot with any weapons or use any tanks. If they can already, or they feel that they can put down countries and put down enemies only with the use of information. That's what they're heading into. And if that doesn't work, then they bring the tanks.
Jessikka, our time is almost up. Let me try to derive from today's afternoon just a few concluding thoughts and remarks. After reading your works and after following your cases in the media space, also during your physical visits to Prague, I mean to say that you represent, at least to me, a real leader in journalism. You are a rock star. You do a great job, and what is more, it's not luckily just me who believe it. It's also the Finnish state, you know, and this is why I'm actually wearing this pin today, not because the great Finnish ambassador gave it to us today, but because Jessikka is the first journalist in the European continent who was actually defended by court because she was cyberbullied and stalked by the Russian trolls. And there was a state court decision, a city court decision to be exact, in Helsinki, who said that this is just wrong, and there was an action taken. Jessikka said that individual dissent may be the way, that we should just not stay calm. So think this is a huge lesson learned, and you're leading the way. You're showing us how to do that. You're writing books that, as we learned, are not always welcome. Believe it or not, also in Czechia, her first book was very, very popular and warmly received, while the second book was refused by the publisher. And they didn't wish to publish it. Is that so? How did that happen?
Only in my life something like this happens. It really is, there's always something like this going on. So it happened so that in Finland my book was published. Its name is Putin's World War, May 2024. Immediately, seriously 5 minutes after it was published, social media and internet was filled with trashing of my book, even though no troll could have been even reading the book. However, they felt that it's wrong, it's conspiracy theories. I'm a far-right propagandist. I'm a far-right propagandist. That's the mental acrobacy that they can really do. After that, one person from Czech sent those trash to my to-be publisher of that book, after which my to-be publisher called my international agent and told that they will not be publishing this because it has received so bad comments and feedback from social media, that they don't dare publish it and that their audience wouldn't appreciate this book. I tried to say to them, seriously, this is just like some Russian trolls spreading Russian propaganda about my book, like please. And he said no, and by the way, he asked, can you please return the payment that we already gave you, or else you are not going to get the rights back of this book, yet if you want to have another publisher, it won't be possible for you to publish. But luckily there might be a brighter future of that book here in Czech. We'll see.
Working on it. Jessikka, just in order to show how much we value your work, I'd like to ask our friends, all of you in the room, to stand up and take a photo with us, with Jessikka, with you in the background, and let's paste it in the internet space, and let's say hello to the Putin's trolls, and actually, to be exact, let's say goodbye to them. And after that, we're done for today, but we are definitely not done with the topic. Are you ready to stand up and say no to the trolls? Hansa, take a selfie.